Good morning, everybody. It is 9:38 right now. Welcome back to the program. Lou and Jackie here. And we get so excited because we check our mailbox and we find the latest copy of Iowa History Journal in there. And we always know we are going to learn something about the state of Iowa that we're going to be able to talk to other people about, too.
Absolutely. And we love talking about the latest edition with Michael Swanger, who's joining us in the studio this morning. And right off the bat, you can't help but to catch this eye-popping graphic on the front of the cover. And that's one of the first stories we want to talk about today.
Well, good morning, Jackie Lou. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the reaction we were hoping for, was that eye-popping cover. It's a bit of an unusual cover for us because it's a bit of an unusual story. It's a strange but true story about World War II that's kind of been lost to history, if you will.
Okay.
How so?
Well, it's when you talk about World War II, no one thinks about Japan bombing North America, let alone Iowa. And it's one of those stories that when it occurred, the government asked the media to cover it up at first because they didn't want Japan to know its success or its failure, the mission of how that happened.
Oh, they got this far in.
Exactly. And what they did was, starting in late 1944, they launched about 9,300 paper balloons across the ocean, across the Pacific Ocean. There's a picture of one of them that we used for our cover. That was illustrated by Kathy Downing. And yeah, they designed these balloons using tree bark from a tree that was unique to Japan. And they launched them using the jet stream across the Pacific Ocean. And the goal was to terrorize U.S. cities. So when we think about terrorism today and everything that our world experiences now, this was, I mean, that's always been affiliated with war, obviously, but this was an earlier form of it.
Right.
And it was, they had no idea where they were going to land. They were designed, they had 32 5-pound bombs on them, and there was a mechanism that was designed based on the altitude of the balloon when they would drop the bombs. Now, the majority of them, as you saw on the map there that we showed, fell in the Pacific Northwest, and that's where the only casualties occurred.
Oh, there were casualties?
There were, yeah. There was 5 young Sunday school children and a woman who was leading that group in Oregon who happened upon the bomb, and then it exploded. They talk about today, even still 3 years ago in Canada, that one of the bombs was found and was still live. So in our story that Michael Vogt wrote, our friend from the Iowa Gold Star Military Museum, he was kind enough to contribute that to us. He even cautioned Iowans, if you're out in the woods and you happen to see one, this was in northern Iowa. I don't think there's any left. Obviously, there was just 2 that were reported in February 1945. But I got to tell you, this is really interesting to me, is I got a call yesterday from a World War II veteran, he and his wife, and they were from Lawrence. And he was still in the service overseas until 46, so he didn't see it happen. But his wife was a kid, and at the time, her brother was friends with one of the gentlemen that we have quoted in our story, and she saw the balloon. So it's a rare eyewitness account to a rare piece of Iowa history. And so she called, and the amazing thing was 2 things. She had never heard of Iowa History Journal, and she said, right away, I've got to subscribe. I said, well, that's great, thank you. Those are the kinds of stories.
That part worked.
That part, we like that, because we like that when people react that way. But the other thing is, she said that she, in all these years, 70-some years later, she had never read about it. She had never heard it reported.
No one's ever covered it before.
Exactly. Well, and it was in the Lawrence newspaper at that time. I believe it was in August. They ran a short little story. This is 1945.
Yeah.
But this is an in-depth look as to give you an idea of what really happened.
I can't believe they made it that far.
Isn't it amazing?
Like, wouldn't you think like a few states over they would see it and be like, hey, maybe we should take that down?
Maybe shoot it down.
Something.
I'm just amazed at the person that thought of this.
Yeah, that invented it in the first place.
It said, this is what's going to happen, and this is how we can implement it, and it worked to get to the middle of the United States.
Exactly, and apparently it was a scientist in Japan in the 20s who started working on it then. Came up with the idea then. So it just kind of goes to show you, this is another one of those examples of stories that are lost to history or somewhat, overlooked or forgotten, and we try to unearth those stories. And so Michael did a really nice job of bringing that to life. And when he first pitched it to me, I thought it was almost kind of it didn't seem real.
Right.
It was, it was kind of remind me of the line from Animal House, when Bluto talks about when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
So it just didn't make sense,
It didn't make any sense.
Yeah, it sounded like something you would hear. So I really appreciate the fact that he was able to get a few photos of a balloon, because those are rare, and then we have some drawings of just the mechanism itself. So,
Right,
yeah.
unbelievable.
Okay. So I also want to talk a little sport in your magazine this month too, the sport of baseball.
We do. We're running a three-part series. You know, last time I was on, we talked about launching that three-part series about the early years of baseball in Iowa from 1858 to 1875. John Liepa is writing it for us. And part two delves into town ball and the importance of town ball and how it brought baseball not only from the amateur level to the professional level, but how it also brought together one set of rules and how it also built community pride and then started building rivalries between towns. So John delves into that aspect of the game.
And that was all happening here in Iowa. Like, did it kind of get start here?
Well, it had started in the east and moved west, but for a lot of states like ours, it came home from the Civil War.
Okay.
And so even though the game had been played before the Civil War, it really took hold after the Civil War when all the soldiers brought it back.
And the rules were made uniform.
Exactly.
And people knew what the rules are, regardless of where you went to play the game.
Exactly, yeah. They were based out of New York, and so there were different rules, and it was nice that they finally all agreed on how to play the game. And a lot of the rules that are in the game still apply today. So yeah, so we're talking about not only just the importance of that, the history of the game, but what it did for Iowa towns. And I know we've talked about this before. You know, when people built towns in Iowa, they built a school and a church and a baseball field. You know, in that order. So that's how important the game has been to Iowa's history.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, let's talk about some incredible individuals as well, and one particular that you're featuring into this catalog.
Well, we're talking about Arthur Collins from Cedar Rapids, who founded Rockwell Collins, and folks who, especially if you're a space enthusiast, you're aware of all the work that they've done in terms of, well, not only with the military, they supplied the military with all their radio equipment during World War II, but they also, or a lot of it, I should say, most of it, but they also supplied equipment that was on the first expeditions to the moon, all the space engineer programs that took place, the first radio communication to bounce off the moon and come back was built by him, by Arthur Collins. He obviously made his living, his name in radio at first, but then he was an engineer and developed all these products for NASA and the military.
Wow.
So it's amazing.
So when you hear the name Rockwell Collins, you have to realize that the Collins part is based from here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When Alan Shepard went up into space and got on the horn to contact Earth and say, hey, here we are, this is what he was using, was the equipment that was designed by this man from Cedar Rapids.
How about that?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I know, I know.
Don't you love the Iowa ties, the Iowa connections to everything?
I do. I never get tired of it. And like I said, just talking to that World War II veteran yesterday, things like that, that's what I really enjoy. I mean, not only is there just a deep, rich history in Iowa, but there's such a personal connection still to be made with folks who are still with us, and that's the part that I really enjoy the most about publishing the magazine. Making that living connection with it.
Unbelievable. And there's even more in here we haven't even touched, because we want to make sure you check out the latest edition. You're talking county fairs and how important they are.
County fairs,
the various ones across the state, because we're into that season as well. But if people want to pick up the latest edition of Iowa History Journal, where can they do so? Or if they want to be, subscribe.
Subscribe like
There
that
you go.
one lady
I
did,
know. I've already mentioned that, haven't I? I didn't mean it that way, but it's, they can pick it up at Casey's or Hy-Vee or Beaverdale Books or the Book Vault. But we do encourage folks to subscribe. They save a little bit that way. They can go online and get it at iowahistoryjournal.com or call us. That's really the best way to get it, and then it's delivered to your doorstep and makes it easy.
Now tell everybody how often the magazine comes out.
Yeah, we publish 6 times a year. This is our July-August issue, so our subscribers usually get it a few days before it hits the racks. We hit the newsstands on July 1st. And we're working on, deadline is coming up in a week or two, working for September, October already.
Already, yeah.
And everything is planned out for this year. We're already.
Can you tease us with anything you're thinking about including in there?
We're going to kind of continue the theme of war at some point later this year, because we're reaching the 100th anniversary of World War I, the conclusion. We're going to delve into the history of a local figure, James Jordan, in our next issue, because West Des Moines here is celebrating its 125th anniversary. I know we talked about that last time I was on. So we're going to talk about James Jordan in the upcoming issue. I do want to mention one other thing real quick if I can. Speaking of stories for the following year, our good friend Larry Kotler was going to write a few pieces for us again next year.
Remember you saying that.
Larry's been a long time contributor to IHJ. Everyone obviously knows the work he's done for you guys, all the work he's done over the years on radio and TV. Such a great spirit. And he loved Iowa history, and I don't know if people know that about him. Obviously, folks who've been reading the magazine over the years have seen his byline, and he did a wonderful job of writing stories for us. And I spoke to him just a couple weeks before he died about some assignments that he wanted to tackle for next year. And what I loved about Larry was his enthusiasm for it. As you know, everything he did, he had a certain zeal that he embraced it with. And we had talked about some story ideas. He was excited. He was starting to work on a few pieces for us. So those are the things that we're reminded of, taking stock of what we have every day and embracing the day and doing the work while you can, and don't put things off. And I'm sad for his family and his friends, and I'm sad that some of the things he wanted to do for us are going to be lost too, but we're grateful for all the things that he did for us. So,
and hopefully in a future edition of the magazine we can reflect.
Absolutely. We'll be talking about Larry in the next one for sure.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Get your latest Iowa History Journal. You're going to love all the great things that makes our state the great state that it is. You're watching CW Iowa Live here on Channel 23. We'll be right back.